What up, it's Brandon here, and today I want to talk to you about a camera that I feel is the future of filming and is by far the best camera for filming yourself skating or just skating in general, and that is the Insta360 One R. So what is this camera? It just looks like a GoPro, you might be saying. Well, this is the camera that you've seen on like pretty much every rollerblading channel at the moment. It looks like a drone's filming someone because you can't see the stick, the selfie stick. So what makes this camera so cool and different from any other action cam? Well, it's the fact that it films in 360 degree, but you can then go in and reframe it to be a normal video. Because if you were like me and you didn't know much about 360 video, you'd probably only see it as a novelty thing. There's very few places where you can really fully take use of a 360 shot, like in Google Maps or something like that. But the fact that you can reframe it into a normal aspect ratio just makes this camera so much better. And it gives you a lot of options on how you can reframe that shot. And that is probably the best part about this. So just quickly go through some of the options you have for reframing. The easiest one they have is an automatic one. In the app for this, all you have to do is press and hold on the subject you want it to keep in frame. It'll put a box around it. It will track it through the whole entire shot and it will just keep it in frame. You can then press a button, choose whatever aspect ratio you want. I'm talking 1:1 square for Instagram. I'm talking vertical for TikTok or Instagram stories or Snapchat, or you can just go straight to the normal cut for like YouTube or even like a movie or something. Now, if you wanted to have a bit more control over it, you can go in and manually do it. You can put in points and slowly track and keyframe the whole thing. But by far my favorite way to reframe a shot, using a viewfinder mode in the app where you use your phone's physical tracking to look around the shot. Now, I'll get another shot to show you what that looks like. This tracking mode makes filming whatever clip you just captured on the 360 cam, like filming a clip in like Skate or like some kind of video game where you can just clip through things and fly around in any angle and track it the whole way. It's even better than that, if I'm honest. So it's pretty much like you're there in the scene, flying around, controlling the zoom, the tracking, all with your phone. It's unbelievably good. It gives it a really natural feel because you're not doing like these keyframe pans, tilts and zooms. It's all done with your hands tracking, so it's got some real lifelike movement to it, and the end product is just unmatchable. It's so good. I have so much fun recapturing these shots like this. It's like reliving that line you just did, reliving that skate, but you get to see it from a whole new angle. And the best thing about it too, it's like when you're filming your mate skating, getting that line, but you can't muck it up. You know, you can't miss the angle. If you frame it wrong, you can just start it again and nothing's lost. It just really feels like the future of filming. I can see it being one day where you just have something you have with you that just captures everything around you that you can then go back and just capture any angle. That's what it feels like the beginning of. And it already just feels like that, if I'm honest. Now, this doesn't just work for selfie shots. If you're filming someone else with this camera, you're never going to be in that situation again where you accidentally, clip their head out, clip their feet out in that landing, where you muck up the filming. That's never going to happen again, because with this camera, you cannot miss the shot because it captures everything. It's like we'll no longer have to get mad at me for screwing up the filming on this line. The other really cool thing is the fact that it makes the selfie stick invisible. The way it does this is it's just in the blind spot of the camera, right? So there's a blind spot obviously in between the lenses and the stick falls perfectly in that. Some other cool things to mention about this camera, the app has some automatic shots that it can create for you completely automatically, and there's new ones coming in all the time. It gives you really clear instructions on how to film something. You give it the clips and it just makes a little montage. The camera does have a really horrible power on beep sound that I absolutely hate. But they did a really cool thing here where you can turn that off. You can even turn off the blinking red light when you're recording. So if you really didn't want people to know you're filming, you can do that. Oh, and did I mention that this is a modular camera? Totally not the reason I got this, but it's a really cool feature of this camera. The whole thing can be broken down into different modules, meaning you can easily turn this camera from a 360 camera into just a usual action camera, There's a 4K module you can put in that puts in just the one lens. You can put it in either way, so you can have the screen so you can selfie and see yourself, or you can have the screen on the back and record normally. Really feels like the future, Oh, also, did I mention it's waterproof as well? Although I don't know how much I would trust that because I can actually see through this down the bottom where the battery connects. But yeah, it's waterproof apparently. So the previous model of this camera, the biggest issue with it was the fact that the lens was so exposed. Everyone who ever had one had smashed the lenses at some point. And they addressed this by adding lens protectors to this one. If you break them, it doesn't matter as much as breaking the 360 lens. And even if you break the 360 lens, you can just buy that module again to replace it. You don't have to buy the whole new camera, which is much cheaper to do. Speaking of the last camera, the Insta360 One X, I never had that camera, but I wouldn't say that this is just better than that camera. I've been watching this guy recently. He does a way better comparison than I'll ever be able to do. I'll link to his video. But just from what I could see, the biggest downside to this camera over the One X is that this one has bigger blind spot, which means you get worse stitch lines, which means the shots don't look quite as convincing all the time, which kind of sucks. So now let's talk about the things that aren't so good about this camera. And first up, those really good lens guards that are cheap and protect the lens, they have quite a big downside. When you have those lens guards on, the lens cap for the camera will no longer fit on. And so you'd think that the lens guards would come with a lens cap for the lens guards, but they don't. They only come with a carry case. So instead of making you keep the lens guards on, you have to take them off every time. And they aren't too hard to take off. There's no point where I'm ever going to want to use this without the guards on. So it's just an annoying thing there where I kind of just have to leave them at risk in my bag because there's no way to protect the lenses once I have the lens guards on. Another bad thing is the app for this camera is absolutely great, but the desktop version of that app is nowhere near as good. It's missing so many features that the Southwind app has, which does suck because it means you're absolutely killing the battery on your phone when you're trying to edit these clips. A desktop or a laptop is obviously going to have more power than your phone most of the time and more, battery life, so it would be cool if you could match that on there. That could come with future software updates. I'm coming to you from the future where an update has happened for the desktop version of this app and they've added everything I could ever want, and now I actually prefer to use the desktop app. And yes, I know my hair's gotten much longer. This footage is pretty old. Anyway. The automatic tracking in the app, I have had some problems with it. It's almost like it's not set up well for rollerblading. Once you automatically track something, you can't really reframe where it tracks you. And I found it really likes to clip my feet out when I automatically do it. Pretty much makes any rollerblading footage useless. That's probably the most important part. Yeah, it's always just been easier for me to manually go in and do it. I also need to add here that the tracking has gone a lot better too, but it's still pretty hit or miss. It seems to depend on the shot. I couldn't tell you why, but sometimes it nails the framing, doesn't crop my feet out, and other times it just won't not crop my feet out. It just depends on the shot. Must be how I film it. Really weird. Another downside is you can ruin the invisible selfie stick illusion by accidentally bumping this and having it in the wrong arrangement. If it's not straight down, it'll be in the shot at some point. I've never had this issue yet because I just haven't touched this bit at all. I've kept it where it is. I'm never going to need to actually tilt that, so I kind of wish it could just screw in. Very minor, but that could happen to you. Another downside of just shooting in 360 is there is a whole nother step to editing. And editing is the worst part of everything to do with filming, right? So having another step kind of sucks, but yeah, that's just how it's got to be. And finally, the stitch lines on these can be pretty bad just because of how big that blind spot was. I do kind of wish they somehow managed to squish this more like the last model so that stitch lines are a bit closer together. When the line lines up with the horizon, it really jumps around and makes it really obvious. That could be fixed in future software updates. I think this is for the urban skater that wants to film their skating, but it's also for anyone filming any kind of action sport out there. It's a bit too delicate and scary to use for solo filming aggressive skating, in my opinion. I always feel like I can't do anything more than a soul grind, but you can use it to film your friends and get some crazy angles. Now, I personally wouldn't use this camera to film like a really top-notch edit. I'm going to stick to using this for filming shots for Instagram, social media, Facebook, stuff that doesn't need to be as high quality, because this camera doesn't replace the camera I'm filming on right now. It's not quite that good yet. I know some of you might be thinking, why would you get this camera that you probably almost never heard of over a GoPro, which you've definitely heard of? Now, from what I've done looking into the comparisons there, this camera just absolutely destroys the GoPro. Everything from how well it stitched shots together to just how the app for this works compared to the GoPro app and how this automatically stitches stuff for you. This camera is just much easier to use and much more user-friendly than the GoPro, just from what I found out anyway. That's just my opinion. I absolutely love this camera. Every time I use it, I have an absolute blast. It blows my expectations every time. It just feels like the future. It doesn't seem like everything I can do on this camera should be possible. It's just insane. If you're on the fence about getting this, I highly recommend getting it. You're not going to regret it. It's a lot of fun. Or I take it with me on every skate now, and every time I remember to use it, I don't regret it at all. It's just so much fun. So I did pay full price for this camera, and if you'd like to help me get some of my money back on this, you can use my affiliate link in the description. That way I get a splashback, and hopefully eventually I can get my money back for it. That would be amazing if you all help me with that. But anyway, Huge thanks to my patrons, and that's about it. See ya.